Good morning to good evening, ladies and gentlemen, because we have some people joining us also online. My name is Abba Obroma Krentil, and I will be your moderator, facilitator for this afternoon session. And it is my pleasure to welcome all of you here to the Ghana Comprehensive Africa Climate Change Initiative pilot outreach event in Accra. Today we gather to showcase the collaborative work of the African Union's Commission Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment, the United States Agency for International Development, and the Institute of Statistical, Social, and Economic Research, and the African Network of Agricultural Policy Research Institutions in piloting the CACCI program in Ghana. Through this initiative, CACCI aims to strengthen national, regional, continental capacity towards developing and implementing nationally determined contributions, that is the NDCs, and national adaptation plans, the NAPs, that will improve resilience, food security, and inclusive growth in the face of climate change. Thus, this afternoon workshop looks forward to sharing lessons learned from other pilot countries in Africa and promoting broad and inclusive participation in the CACCI-Ghana pilot program with our partners and stakeholders. In our program, we have great stakeholders and partners who will give their remarks. We'll also have the honor of the country leads of CACCI share their lessons and challenges in a roundtable discussion in the second session of the program. At the end of the discussion, we'll have an opportunity to ask them questions, and we hope that you will take advantage of this and ask any questions or comments that you have. We will end the activities for the day with the outdooring of the steering working group and closing remarks by the director of ISA, followed by a photo session. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to welcome Professor Peter Korte, director of ISA, to give his welcome address. Thank you.
I believe I've welcomed some of you already, so pardon me for the double welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. There are a lot of dignitaries here. If I want to start, I will not finish. So permit me to stand on existing protocols and what we normally say in Ghana, that all protocols duly observed. Before I continue, let me acknowledge online the participation of Mr. Hassan Nyambe, the Director of Sustainable Environment and Blue Economy of AUC, that is the African Union Commission. He is online participating. Mr. Nyambe, we are very grateful that you join us, given your busy schedules. I am quite excited this morning to welcome you again because at the University of Ghana, we really pride in such engagement. This afternoon, we have the Comprehensive Climate Change Initiative pilot event, of which we are hosting. We at ISA undertake teaching, research, and advocacy, and that is something that is really dear to our hearts, which we do very religiously. We understand the power of collaborative engagement in reducing barriers and creating opportunities for researchers to exchange ideas, learn, as well as network. These exchanges are important for generating new perspectives and building and strengthening the collaborative ties that we need to deepen the development impact of our work, and that is individually as well as collectively. ISA therefore remains committed to working with institutions such as yours to undertake research that influences policy for a better future. Once again, we are delighted to host this CACCI Outlet event for several reasons. First, Ghana is the first selected country to pilot the CACCI program. It is also expected that the lessons learned from the implementation of the CACCI pilot phase in Ghana will lead to the development and implementation of a detailed and fully costed national CACCI policy investment plan. This plan will be based on the best available evidence that will drive the adoption of practices throughout the agricultural value chain towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions, while promoting sustainable, resilient, and more productive approaches that will foster food security and inclusive growth. Also, the outcome would help shape policy and improve future well-being. In Ghana, the ISA, the African Network for Agricultural Policy Research Initiative, that is an APRI, anchor member, leads the implementation of the CACCI-Ghana pilot program with the oversight support of the constituted steering working group, whose members have been drawn from the existing NDCs and NAPs working groups. It is against this background that we are holding this afternoon's event to showcase the CACCI pilot program in Ghana. During this event, ladies and gentlemen, the collaborative work CACCI Ghana has been doing with Policy Link, another USAID-funded activity, will be highlighted, as well as lessons learned from the pilot countries in Africa. The workshop objectives are: one, sharing lessons learned from the implementation of the CACCI pilot program in other 3 countries and initial implementation steps in Ghana. Then 2, network with partners and key stakeholders relevant to CACCI to promote broad and inclusive participation in the CACCI Ghana pilot program. And lastly, showcase CACCI Ghana program synergies with other funded initiatives, especially the Policy Link. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our hope that having gone through this will generate some output or outcomes, and I mentioned them. One is key stakeholders, be it public, private, civil society organizations, development partners, academia, etc., will be fully sensitized on the CACCI Ghana pilot program and their inputs collated. Secondly, expansion of the relevant stakeholder portfolio in Ghana for the CACCI pilot project. And lastly, synergies between the CACCI Ghana pilot program and policy link actions identified and shared. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, for those that have welcome already and those that haven't welcome, I warmly welcome you to ISA and the University of Ghana. I wish you fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Korte, for your welcome remarks. We'll zoom into the remarks. And first on the podium, I would like to invite Engineer Joy Hesse Ankoma, who is part of the working group on Ghana's NDCs and NAPs. Engineer, please welcome. Let's welcome him.
Good afternoon, and also before protocol observed. I think I'm giving this speech on behalf of both the NAP focal person and the NDC focal person. They are equally engaged in a national assignment out of the country. Okay, so I'm wearing 2 caps here. Climate change is considered one of the most serious threats to Ghana. More than 30-year climate record have revealed that there is high likelihood of spells may lead to floods in the country. Uncertainty in the future climate will be far more significant than in the past. Also, in the past 50 years, 22 major hydrometeorological events in Ghana has affected over 60 million people with over 400 deaths. Ghana's 2019 base year greenhouse gas emission of about 60 million tons CO2 equivalent, which represent 86% rise in 10 years, are projected to increase to 100 million tons CO2 equivalent if business continues as usual by 2030. Ghana aims to implement about 47 programs of action, of which 34 mitigation measures, and we have 13 adaptation measures, and also gender issues. This cast across 11 sectors with 8 socio-economic outcomes. The country requires, for the 34 mitigation measures, the country requires about $9.3 billion to $15.5 billion for a 10-year implementation period. The breakdown of these 34 mitigation measures cut across several sectors. We have that of the transport sectors, which have both 3 unconditional and 2 conditional measures. We have the energy sector with 5 unconditional and 15 conditional measures. Forestry have 3 unconditional measures with also 2 conditional measures. We have waste and others too as well. The adaptation programs of actions are to contribute to building resilience in vulnerable agricultural landscapes, enhancing value addition in the utilization of forest resources, resilient infrastructure, early warning and disaster prevention, manage climate-induced health risks, also integrated waste management and gender issues. The NDC identified also the international carbon market for mobilization of carbon finance to support its implementation. The achievement of the NDCs commitment depends on Ghana's ability to fully implement the mitigation measures and adaptation plans as early, and also to showcase real successes on the ground for the betterment of the people and climate at large. None of the actions can be implemented the way it is envisaged without having coherent policies, capable and well-coordinated institutional rules, access to requisite investment and technology. Therefore, the focus is to advocate for the consistency of implementation of existing policies and regulations with the view to contribute to the realization of these objectives. Already, many organizations are involved in the climate change space, and they will be looking forward to stepping up their efforts to translate the NDCs and the NAP into investment proposals, and then to create projects on the ground. Besides, all actors, public or private, must be equipped with the required skills to be able to implement these actions. My mother ministry, which is MESTI, is the focal head of these NDC programs, and EPA provide a supporting role or the coordinating role and the technical aspect of it. With a new EPA, with the revision of our new act, we are trying to revise the Act 490, which will give us further backing for the implementation of Article 6.2, the cooperative approach, and the Article 6.4, mechanism under the Paris Agreement. In summary, collaboration is critical in achieving Ghana's NDC and NAP ambitions, and the team through EPA is ready to support all activities that will help the country in achieving these goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Engineer Akuma. We'll take the next remarks from Misty, that's the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology, and Innovation by Mr. Kwame Nakwesin, who is the Director for Science Technology. Mr. Kwame. Okay. So we'll just move on to the next remarks on the program, which will be given by Nalishebo Mibilo, who is the Executive Director for Africa Network of Agricultural Policy Research Institute, and we'll take it virtually. So if we could please project it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Madam Moderator? Can you hear me?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So it's wonderful to see all of you who are present at this event, both in person and virtually, and representing your institutions, your countries and regions in support of the CACCI agenda. So in delivering my few remarks, I just want to begin by recognizing the representative of the African Union Commission, Mr. Hassan Nyambe, who is the Director for Sustainable Environment and Blue Economy. I'd also like to recognize the representative of the Government of Ghana, who's here present, Professor Peter Kote, our host and Executive Director at ISA, the University of Ghana, and also a board member of ANAPRI. I also recognize that we have USAID representatives in this meeting, representatives from Michigan State University. I also recognize colleagues from beyond the African border, from Asia, South America, and so on. I'm happy to see you in this room. We met earlier in the previous conversations. I recognize colleagues from ANAPRI and the wider network, researchers, academics, experts who are here in this meeting. I always want to recognize my fellow women and our young people, and also not forgetting our communications experts and the media. These are all stakeholders who are important to this topic that we are discussing today. So all protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to speak on this important occasion, the Ghana Comprehensive Africa Climate Change Initiative Pilot Outreach Event, which is graciously organized by ISA and Policy Link in Ghana. CACCI, as you may be aware, was designed to generate a proof of concept, to collect feedback and insights from its implementers, its partners and stakeholders towards strengthening CACCI's viability as a prototype for our continent and now, I believe, the globe. I'm told that this event in Ghana, therefore, is designed with a view to enable the sharing of lessons learned from the implementation of CACCI in the pilot countries and to highlight the very early steps of CACCI implementation in Ghana. I believe that this is also an opportunity to foster a spirit of networking and collaboration. I heard Professor Kote talk about the importance of collaboration with implementers, with our partners, and key stakeholders that are relevant to the CACCI project, and to promote broad and inclusive participation in the Ghana CACCI processes specifically. So I'm excited to also be opportune to the presentations that will reveal to us how the CACCI project in Ghana collaborates with other initiatives that are working in the same space. Initiatives such as Policy Link, which I believe is working very closely with ISA in implementing the CACCI project. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, just a brief issue about ANAPRI and who we are. We are a network of 16 recognized national agricultural policy centers. We pride ourselves in our ability to come together as African researchers and think tanks to share not only a plate of jollof rice, fufu, kontomre, banku, bitter leaf, or indeed ugali or pap, depending on which part of the continent you are from. We also come together to solve common problems affecting Africa's food system, to generate evidence in support of policy making, while of course we share that good food. ANAPRI's network members are keen to share data, approaches and methods, while also building the capacities of our centers to become centers of excellence, to be able to generate high quality research towards providing key recommendations to our policymakers at national, regional, and continental levels. We are located in 15 countries of Africa. We have a desire at the moment to induct 2 more countries very soon in order to expand our footprint across Africa because we see our relevance. Our outreach activities enable us to share key research findings and recommendations while we engage with key stakeholders in the continent to also receive their validation. As I speak, ladies and gentlemen, we are organizing our largest outreach event this year, the 10th annual ANAPRI Stakeholders Conference, which will be held at Victoria Falls town in Zimbabwe. And it is hosted by our network member, the University of Zimbabwe. So I welcome you to join us from 14th November to 16th November at the Victoria Falls. In the context of today's event, at ANAPRI we believe that climate change affects the entire globe and is a cross-cutting issue affecting our economies in different ways. We believe that it will take a concerted effort to address the effects of global warming and that this needs to be done sooner rather than later. The topic of climate change is huge, and we believe that 1 or 2 organizations cannot cover all the thematic areas under climate change. It is for this reason that we are pleased to have partnered with the African Union Commission, with Academia 2063, and others to deliver on an initiative that will help national governments in their efforts to effectively implement their NDCs and NAPs through the generation of data, good analytics, monitoring, evaluation and reporting, and regular mutual accountability for results and impact. We are also pleased that CACCI has been escalated to the global level and that we are all sharing lessons from one region of the world to another. This initiative would not have been possible without the support of USAID and through Michigan State University. So allow me, therefore, to thank USAID, Africa's all-weather friend, for the support that you continue to provide to the continent of Africa, and in particular to my organization, ANAPRI. In concluding, let me say this, that with our recent growth at ANAPRI over the last few years, it has become more evident that African-based researchers and think tanks, given the necessary tools and substantial resources, while of course working with like-minded partners in the North, cannot fail in delivering high-quality research for development in support of Africa's food system. I therefore implore on our partners to continue to support us in the African continent, continue to support what is being called localization, to enable us to work together to support the African continent's food system. With this, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to thank you once again for your participation in this event, to thank the sponsors, the implementers of CACCI in Africa across the globe, to thank also our national governments for embracing CACCI as an initiative that will support the implementation of NDCs and NAPs. So with this, I wish you good deliberations, and I look forward to receiving the report of today's event. Thank you. Over to you, moderator.
Thank you so much, Madam, for your remarks. We'll take the next remarks from the Michigan State University, and we have David Shelley giving us the remarks.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. It's great to see this outreach event on CACCI. The reason I'm speaking is that CACCI began and in Africa is still at this point funded through PRCI, the Innovation Lab for Food Security Policy Research, Capacity and Influence that Michigan State runs with its partners, right? However, CACCI will soon be expanding, we expect, well beyond PRCI, well beyond the 4 countries that it's working in Africa now, and well beyond. It's already working through in some Latin American countries and beginning in Asian countries as well, and we expect it to expand well beyond that. I want to emphasize 3 things here in my very brief comments. One is action, one is evidence, one is localization, okay, or local organizations and systems. So CACCI is a comprehensive action for climate change initiative to generate action on climate change. That means new and more appropriate policies, programs, regulatory structures that are needed for carbon markets, forestry management, water management, and so forth, right? And bankable investment programs that are built out enough that they can be invested in, right? So it's about action, but it's about that action being based on the best evidence that we can have under the time pressure of having to take an action sooner rather than later, as Nali Sheba was just saying, right? So it's about bringing evidence to bear as best we can on those actions that are taken, on the policies and programs and so forth that are designed, right? And true to PRCI's approach, in CACCI, we are working very much through local organizations. Michigan State University is not at the forefront in this, right? Who's at the forefront? It's ANAPRI regionally. It's another partner, Academia 2063, that has Africa-wide network. They are regional partners. They are then coordinating with, networking with, passing resources to local organizations, in this case here, ISER, okay, in Ghana. ISER is then working with existing policy processes, existing working groups, okay, existing structures, tying into that and adapting itself to those structures, hopefully engaging with you, maybe improving how things happen, bringing evidence to bear, but tying into the local structures. So we're not coming in and imposing anything. We're coming in and finding out what's going on in a country, engaging with the stakeholders, figuring out how to make that better, right? So that in the end we have better policies, better programs, investments, regulatory structures that will, yes, result in greener growth for Ghana, but more than anything, given that Ghana releases very few greenhouse gases, right, will drive adaptation to the big impacts that you know you're going to be having. So with that, I will end. Thank you very much, and really looking forward to what comes out of this, and then the next steps, right? The next steps are what really matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. We'll take the next remarks from USAID, and it will be virtual. We have Christy Cook giving us the remarks.
Thank you so much.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Apologies, we've been doing a bit of back and forth here. The USAID mission was originally supposed to attend, but unfortunately could not make it, though I know they are very supportive of this work and very excited of working together with our amazing team from ISER and from ANAPRI in conjunction with the Policy Link program that is set up to help support climate policy as well. My name is Emily Weeks. I am very sorry for not being there in person. I am the AOR of PRCI and really would have liked to be attending the full event for multiple reasons, was unable to make it. But I'm glad it is going so well, and I have been attending virtually and very excited to see everyone's presence and hope that I can meet a few people virtually through these 2 days together. Again, I would like to acknowledge the amazing effort coming out of our team, coming from MSU, ANAPRI, and ISER, and our colleagues across our other countries, working from institutions and from our counterpart government colleagues who are supporting CACCI. As noted, CACCI was established in Africa through the leadership of the AUC, and again acknowledging the AUC's support and guidance through the startup of CACCI and as we build out across countries throughout the continent. Really excited to have Sam on board as well. I see he's joined virtually to be able to work with us in collaboration with the AUC and with all our partners across the CACCI effort. And really excited to have Ghana be one of our pilot countries. It has been a long road to get to this state of startup, but that's part of the process, and we really appreciate the support we're receiving from the government, and all of us are working towards a shared goal of meeting our climate challenges, of meeting the impacts of climate change, of helping reduce the impacts of climate change, and acknowledging that the guidance is coming through our partner countries and through the NDCs and NAPs strategies that are being established and implemented. So again, I want to say thank you to Anthony for pulling this together today, for bringing us all together for this discussion, for this event. I think that we have a great work plan moving forward, and really excited to be able to work over the course of the year to deliver on the work that has been put forward and being able to help Ghana achieve some of its climate goals. So I won't speak too long. I just wanted to again acknowledge the fantastic team we have here. It's all due to their efforts that we've gotten as far as we have gotten, and it's due to their efforts that we have expanded globally. So thank you again, and I really look forward to hearing the discussion today. I am online and open to any questions or remarks being directed my way, and again, apologies for not being in person, but I will be here virtually, and look forward to the rest of the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Weeks, for your remarks. We'll have our last but not the least remarks by AUC Director in the person of Hassan Yambe, who is also the Director for Sustainable Environment and Blue Economy, and we'll take it virtually. Okay, so we'll zoom into the second session as we wait for the director to join us online, which the second session which focuses on the roundtable discussion. But before I will call my panelists on stage for us to start, we'll have a 10-minute presentation on the overview of CACCI. And we have Anthony Chaputo doing that for us. It's now online. Okay. So, Mr. Yambe, will please take your remarks.
Could the host please unmute Mr. Nyambe? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, for giving us the floor. And let me start also by registering our appreciation to the CACCI Africa team for extending an invitation to the African Union Commission. And of course, register also appreciation to USAID for funding this initiative and the partnership with the ANAPRI, Academia, University of Michigan, and all others that are actually involved in this initiative. And you'll agree with me that climate change is actually affecting every fabric of our existence and is more felt, in fact, by the less privileged. And for a continent such as Africa, where we depend heavily on climate-sensitive sectors as well as ecosystems, it means that we are actually more vulnerable when it comes to issues of climate change. And we recognize the efforts of our member states in terms of putting policies in place, already mentioned by others, such as, for example, climate change policies, as well as initiatives and frameworks such as NDCs and NAPs, and all those actually require investments, and member states are actually pumping in money also to be able to make sure that they contribute towards the global good of addressing climate change. However, it's also important to note that even at continental level, we are also working on a number of initiatives as well as putting policy measures in place to be able to contribute towards the solution of climate change on the continent. And to this end, we have got what we call the African Union Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy of 2022. We have got also the Green Recovery Action Plan, which was our response to the impact of COVID. And that again also prioritizes 5 areas, which is climate finance, renewable energy and energy efficient, just transition, nature-based solution, resilient cities, as well as resilient agriculture. And it is also important to note that we have got targets as a continent. And among those targets, some of them, of course, are based on Agenda 2063. Some of them are actually anchored on the 2030 sustainable goals. But I can give an example of a target such as ending hunger by 2025. At the time when it was set, it was more realistic. But today, it's actually not possible because of the impact of climate change. But apart from that, we have got other challenges such as conflicts, which are also actually undermining our efforts to be able to address issues of climate change. Therefore, it is quite important that we give attention or pay attention to the work that is being done under these initiatives, the analytics that are actually involved, as well as the issues of research. Why am I saying that? It's because for us to be able to develop policies, we need to make sure that those policies are actually informed by data. And unless they're informed by data, we may be shooting in the wrong direction. But in addition to that, we need this data and information to be able to monitor, for example, how member states are actually performing in the implementation of their NDCs, as well as various frameworks. So it's actually critical as a feedback mechanism to be able to also inform us in terms of what other interventions are needed, where are the gaps and so forth, so that we can be able to move forward. Therefore, we just want to register our appreciation to the work that is ongoing under the CACCI initiative, and we feel that this work is actually quite important in complementing the work of the African Union Commission. But in addition to that, just to alert you that we have also since 2022 started the implementation of what we call the multi-hazard early warning system. And this is a mechanism that we are using to alert, for example, member states of looming cyclones as an example, or drought or floods. And the information that is coming from this CACCI initiative is actually quite important also when it comes now to the analysis of the impacts that are associated with the disasters that are actually affecting our continent. So on that note, I would want once again just to thank the organizers who have actually extended the invitation to the African Union and to pledge our support and commitment to the initiative. I submit.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yambe, for your remarks. As I said before, we'll take a presentation by Anthony Chaputo on CACCI.
Thank you very much, moderator. You see, after many people have spoken, all distinguished remarks, I don't know whether I have anything to say, but of course, I need to use up my 10 minutes, if you allow me. You know, I would like to thank the Ghana team, Simon, Andrew, and his team. They've been fantastic. We really wanted to have this outreach in Ghana, and we had to convince PRCI to say, please, can we piggyback on your event? And they allowed us to do that. Thank you very much. We really appreciate the opportunity to have this function this afternoon. Let me see if I can, where do I point? There? Oh, there. Oh, good. First things first, you have heard CACCI. There are two things we are using here. There is first CACCI Africa. We are defining it as Comprehensive Africa Climate Change Initiative. However, things have moved very quickly into the globe, so that's why you had Dave say Comprehensive Action for Climate Change Initiative. So we use these interchangeably, but in Africa we prefer the Comprehensive Africa Climate Change Initiative, but we are part of the global family. So if you say CACCI, you are not wrong. CACCI is CACCI. It has to do with climate change, and all the different activities we are doing thanks to the support of USAID. I think in terms of the support, USAID has been very gracious to give us this support. We have African Union who are hand-holding us throughout this process. Of course, ANAPRI and academia are the two technical partners implementing the pilot. You've heard that. And we are very grateful that we have put together a team that you hear more about what is happening in the countries. So we have our partner from academia who will talk about Rwanda and Senegal. And then ANAPRI, we have Ghana and Zambia. And of course, thanks to Michigan State University for allowing these two institutions as the technical partners for CACCI in Africa. Unfortunate. Yeah, maybe you can manually move it. I think it's not doing very well. You see this, if you see this map, it's a very interesting map. You know, this is the Notre Dame Global Adaptation Initiative, and what it shows basically here, where you see green means things are all right, things are happening, there are investments happening to try to respond to climate change. Where you see red or orange means things are not so great. And unfortunately, Africa is in orange, red, most of it. But what does it mean? In terms of emissions, Africa, we emit very little. Very, very little.
But in terms of the impacts of climate change, we are equally vulnerable globally. So this shows how we are prepared to deal with the situation. And the red, the orange shows that we are not well prepared. That's why we need CACCI to assist in the implementation of the commitments that our governments made in terms of, one, carbon emissions, as well as to try to adapt to climate change. Next. You can, next. This I won't repeat. I think colleagues that gave remarks, particularly my executive director from ANAPRI, indicated that this initiative started a long time ago. You see, 2017, and this is a pilot, proof of concept. And what you see today from the panel is to try to learn lessons of the implementation of CACCI to date. And we have more countries coming on board soon. You will hear more about that as we bring our coordinator for the Africa CACCI. Next. Next. So CACCI has 4 pillars. First, we want to make sure that we clarify the ambitions. These countries, every country committed to reducing carbon emissions. So through the NDCs, these commitments are laid out. And second, we want to make sure that we strengthen human capacity and the implementation capacity. Third, we want to strengthen the implementation of the NDCs and NAPs. And fourth, that is last but not least, I think you heard the director from the African Union for Sustainable Environment and Blue Economy say that commitment is something else. We need to know whether are we really sticking to our commitment. So tracking and monitoring is very key. But how do you do that? You need to do that through collecting data. You need to do that through analyzing what you have on the ground and be able to feed that back into policy making. So those 4 pillars are very important. Next slide, please. So how are we working in different countries? As indicated, ANAPRI and Academia 2063 are technical partners supporting work in the pilot countries. ANAPRI is leading work in Ghana and Zambia, and Academia 2063 is leading work in Rwanda and Senegal. Our preferred way of working is through the multi-stakeholder climate change technical committees. But however, situations on the ground, it's heterogeneous. Some countries do not have very effective or very functional committees, but not saying that there's nothing going on. They're just working in different, different institutions are responsible for doing different things. For example, in Zambia, there is a technical climate change committee which has brought everyone together. So we are implementing CACCI through that. And so through CACCI, basically, we are trying to improve the implementation of these NDCs through better coordination. Next, please. So in terms of the pillars that I talked about, clarifying ambitions and set policy agendas, basically we're asking a few questions. What are the NDC commitments? Are these commitments, the targets that they've committed to, are they realistic? And what are the indicators and the metrics to track progress? And is there data available to track and monitor progress? So we have various outputs that we are going to be producing that we already started coming through, basically to help the country relook at their NDCs so that at least we have more realistic commitments. But this cannot happen without data and evidence. So this is where CACCI has come in to fill that gap. I mean, as I indicated, there are many players in this field. And because we are think tanks, academic institutions, we want to make sure we use data and evidence to ensure that our NDCs and NAPs are guided by evidence. Next. The second pillar, as I indicated, is strengthening human and institutional capacity. And as I indicated, we work through these multi-stakeholder climate change technical committees. And we are also trying to strengthen the country-level data and analytical capabilities. So we have been considering setting up, data clusters and all this. So there's a lot that is going on, and this we don't do alone. We work in partnership with our stakeholders. Next. Then strengthening implementation. And in terms of implementation, basically, there's two streams of work we are doing. It's called ex-ante analysis on mitigation and adaptation. Basically, we're trying to find out whether the commitments are realistic, as I indicated. What are the trade-offs? I mean, there are things that we committed to, but there are a lot of, when you use resources in one area, you can't use them in the other. Or when you do a certain project, you also deprive resources in the other. So there is some work that we are doing that will contribute to what stakeholders are doing in the country. So we are going to provide the evidence in terms of both mitigation and adaptation pathways to really refine the NDCs and NAPs. So in terms of implementation, as I indicated, I think there's need for us to strengthen coordination. So our partner, Academia 2063, is helping us develop a collaboration portal, which we will then try to customize for the different countries. I mean, academia has been working in terms of monitoring the CADAP. So they have developed platforms to help this. And in this era, digital coordination is very important. So we would like this CACCI to add value to what is happening in the country. Next. And last but not least, I think is the issue of tracking progress, reporting, and monitoring. Here, we plan we plan under the pilot to have what we are calling an Africa Mitigation and Adaptation Review Platform, similar to the CADAP monitoring platform. And also, we are helping under CACCI to strengthen the monitoring and evaluation infrastructure at the AUC. I think as Emily indicated, we have a senior climate change officer based in Ethiopia now, Sam, and we are hoping that you'll see more and more of what we are doing in Ghana, what we are doing in Zambia, what we are doing in Rwanda, what we are doing in these other additional countries being more reflected at the continental level. Next. I think I've utilized my 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anthony, for your presentation on CACCI, on what the objectives are and what it intends to achieve. Thank you. We'll zoom into our roundtable discussion, which will look at emerging lessons from front-runner pilot countries, and especially on CACCI-Ghana, which is implementing this initiative in collaboration with Policy Link. So I will invite our panelists for their discussion, and in no order, I would like to invite from Zambia, Cassandra Bunda. If you are here, can you please move up front? Okay, so he will do it virtually. Then from Ghana, I have Simon Bawachileno. If you can please take your seat up front. From Rwanda and Senegal, we have Jitao who also do it virtually. Then from Ghana Policy Link, we have Gerard Foku. Okay, please clap for them as they take their seats. Then for CACCI Africa, we have Chihenyo Kangara. So if you could, sorry, it's good to see a female be part of the panel. Welcome, madam. Then from CACCI Asia, we have Suresh Babu. Thank you, sir. Can we please get mics for our panelists, technical team? So basically, this roundtable discussion will do a 40-minute discussion on questions that will be posed to them. Then after which we will take 20 minutes Q&A and any comments from our audience. Technical team, is it possible I can get a mic myself so I can sit and ask the questions? Thank you. So in no particular order, as I wait for the microphone, I would like to start with Cassandra Buddha, who is virtually, and if you could just please in 3 minutes give us an overview of how CACCI is being implemented in Zambia. Just 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, moderator, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Mulenga. I'm standing in for Cassandra Bunda, who is committed with other equally important issues relating to climate change. So I'll stand in for Cassandra Bunda. So quickly, how is Zambia implementing the CACCI project? To begin with, I think as Zambia, we're very excited that, we are one of the few countries that were selected to be piloting the CACCI. So quickly, in terms of implementation, CACCI is being implemented, and I think as Anthony pointed out, and Prof. Dave, CACCI is being implemented in Zambia through the Anchor NAPRI Institute, the Indaba Agricultural Policy Research Institute, IAPRI, which has made very good strides in collaborating with the government, particularly the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, but also with other line ministries and government agencies. IAPRI has since signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, not just for the CACCI, although the CACCI, was a catalyst for that, but the memorandum of understanding goes beyond the activities of the CACCI. It spells out, collaborations in so many areas, research, data sharing, issues of resource mobilization, capacity building beyond the CACCI. So we have created a technical working group for the CACCI, which comprises personnel from IAPRI, as well as colleagues from the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. And we do interact directly with the technical working group on climate change, which is in charge of coordinating our climate actions in the country, looking at the technical side of it. And this group reports to the Council of Permanent Secretaries, then who report to the Council of Ministers, where that council is chaired by the Vice President of the country. So that's how much climate change has been elevated in Zambia. So beyond just the ministry and other government agencies, we are also working very closely with other research institutions, academic institutions, and civil society organizations. So as you can see, we are quite very involved in the whole process, and slowly but surely, I think CACCI has helped not just to strengthen the collaboration between IAPRI and the government, but also the collaboration among other institutions that are involved in the climate change space in Zambia. So going forward, we have also strengthened our collaboration with other agencies that have been mandated, to review Zambia's NDCs as well as the national adaptation plans, because the ministry has identified a few agencies that are working on these processes, and we have created very strong linkages with these agencies. And as I'm speaking right now, I'm at a meeting, a validation workshop for the NDC implementation framework, where we're reviewing the indicators, the metrics, and just the implementation framework structures on how the NDCs are going to be implemented and achieved. So I think looking at the time that I was given, maybe I can leave it here for now. Thank you, moderator. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. I will go to Jital, who is also online, to tell us a bit about how Academia 2063 is implementing CACCI in Senegal and Rwanda. Please, you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Getao Tadessa. I work for Academia 2063 as a Director for Operation Support. I'm based here in Kigali, Rwanda. I think CACCI Rwanda and CACCI Senegal, we launched them both in Senegal and Rwanda. I think late last year, and in Rwanda early in January this year. And how we start implementing CACCI is just we first try to understand the needs and priorities, and also the activities that are going on in the countries. So as Dave said, that we want to add values on the ongoing initiatives and ongoing activities for the implementation of the NDCs and the NAPs. So what we do is we just try to understand what are the priorities and what are the activities going on in these two countries. And based on that, and then we try to support them. So before we starting to the actual supporting the technical supports, we launched them. In the launching, we organized the multi-stakeholders from different, including the climate change working groups from the two countries. And then we were just selected 2 key stakeholders in each country. For example, for Senegal, we closely work with CSE, which is the Ecological Monitoring Center of Senegal. And in Rwanda, we closely work with REMA, which is the Rwanda Environment Management Agency. Both of these institutions are public institutions. They are under the Ministry of Environment in their respective countries. So we have the project agreement with them, and we have the bigger memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Environment in both countries. And then we start to discuss about the details of the technical activities that we work. Even if these are the 2 leading stakeholders, we also work with very diverse stakeholders, because some of the activities might be worked on in different stakeholders. For example, in Rwanda, for tracking and supporting the implementation of their MRVs, we work with Ministry of Environment, but also we work with, for example, on investment programming, we work with FONORA, which is the Rwanda Green Fund Agency. So we help them to develop some investment plans and also fundable projects on adaptation and mitigation. So I think even if you have lead stakeholders, local stakeholders, we have very diverse stakeholders depending on the activities that we are trying to support them. So this is how we support them. From our side, we have teams that can provide this support. We have two types of teams. The first one is country-specific team. We have a team for Senegal, we have a team for Rwanda. At the same time, we have thematic teams. Thematic teams, for example, on emission estimations, greenhouse gas monitoring and emission, on tracking progress. On the four pillars of CACCI, we have different teams in our Academia 2063, and plus some academic institutions in the countries. And so through these teams, we provide them day-to-day supports. So far, I think we are helping aggressively to implement, their monitoring and evaluation systems for the Ministry of Environment in Rwanda, for example, and also we do the same thing for Senegal. So our activity is different from the different climate change support activities because it's based on research, based on actual evidences and analytics that we support. We are not doing research for the sake of research, but we are supporting research for actions. So we just supporting them through analytics and through evidences, data collections, and also bringing some best practices from different countries within the continent and outside of the continent, and then we provide them to develop some investment plans which are fundable and which can be implemented by the local stakeholders. So this is how we function and we support them, the two countries. I think I have to stop here, and if you have more questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I will definitely come back to you, and I'll go to Simon, who is in charge of Ghana. If you please can tell us CACCI in Ghana and how it's being implemented. And before you do so, you can just please introduce yourself in a line or two.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Moderator. So my name is Simon Bawachileno, proverbially meaning you don't count your chickens before they are hatched. That's the surname. So a bit of my introduction. Thank you. I think it's an opportunity to also give a bit of a background to what is happening in Ghana as far as CACCI-Ghana is concerned. I would say we are probably the late runners. Late runner in a sense that we kick-started not too long ago. However, I think in no time, we may be like Usain Bolt. We may be very fast runners. I think Professor David surely sort of made mention of some three key pillars of what CACCI Global is all about. And I think that is how we have actually found ourselves in terms of our work, streams. So action, evidence, and localization. Indeed, our role as far as, working on CACCI is to ensure that we really play a key, sort of vital role for the implementation of the NDCs and the NAPs. And in that light, what we have been trying to do is to take action in terms of research, action in the area of trying to look at what, the country status is when it comes to climate change issues. Where are we in terms of in terms of how the country has sort of experienced climate change issues? What have been the, adaptation and the nationally determined contribution sort of initiatives? As a country, we have updated our NDCs. In 2015, we came out with the initial one, and 2021 in Glasgow, COP26, if I'm not wrong, we launched our updated NDCs, and that, I think, were the content which the rep for the NAPs and the NDC person actually talked about. And so our action has been, how do we leverage the effort of the implementation of these two very key approaches of getting climate change issues tackled. So the country assessment report sort of tries to, unpack what exactly the situation is on the ground. What have been the implementation progress? So from 2015, we updated in 2021, but what do we know in terms of what we did as a country implementing those, commitments from 2015 up to 2020? So our desire has been beginning to, first of all, get that understanding, so that based on that, I think we will have generated evidence that will inform how, the implementation of the updated NDCs and the NAP will actually travel. But not just doing that, our interest has been, how do we localize? In the form of localization, our approach is also just like what Academia 2023 actually talked about. We are trying, or also involving ourselves in what we will call, a knowledge exchange process. We know there are technical people that are actually implementing, the various programs on NAPs and on the NDCs. And so whatever we are generating, our interest is that there should be that input from these very technical people, so that every evidence that we are generating is very useful, actually, to the implementation processes. So far, we have been able to produce a draft assessment of the country assessment report. We are also interested in how we can sort of help them with the future, producing mitigation and adaptation pathways through other, modeling processes. So as a team, we've also subdivided ourselves, those of us concentrating on trying to get the extant situation well anchored, and those who will be helping with the modeling or informing the future situation. But to really make all of that very meaningful, our interest is also to look at where the gaps are when it comes to capacity issue. In this case, our interest is going beyond the national level capacity, but also going down to the local level. And this is where the localization is also very paramount, because sometimes we only sort of stay with the national level to say we don't have the technical expertise. But we've forgotten that it is within the district, the municipalities, that implementation of climate change initiatives actually take place. And so what is the level of capacity at that level, at that place? And I will say, so far, this is where we've gotten to, and I'll end here so that the conversation can continue.
Yeah, thank you so much. My next question will be directed to Gerald. And before you answer, please also do give an introduction of yourself. We know that CACCI-Ghana is being implemented in collaboration with Policy Link. So could you tell us a bit about the collaboration?
Thank you. My name is Gerald. Hello. I work as the climate change lead for Policy Link. The name of Policy Link has come up in almost every speech, and I think it's fair that I give a quick overview of Policy Link. So Policy Link is an activity under the Feed the Future, which is supported by the USAID. And our main objective is to strengthen policy systems, policy actors, focusing more on agriculture and food systems. Of course, you can't deal with agriculture and food systems without climate change, and that is why we have a climate change focus as well. We have about three main objectives, or three sub-objectives. The first one is to improve the quality of evidence for policy. As it has been said severally, what drives policy is evidence, data, and research. And our job is to look at the policy actors who are responsible for the generation of data and research to inform policy and to strengthen their capacities, strengthen the systems within which they work to enable this. The second objective is to strengthen coordination, collaboration, and inclusivity in the policy process. So there are so many actors in the policy process, and our work is to enable or create an environment where these actors are working together. Inclusivity is very important because there are some actors who are traditionally normally left out of the policy process, and our job, for example, women, youth, PWDs, our job is to enable these actors to also be part of the process. And the third one is on knowledge management, knowledge sharing. There are a lot of things that we are learning from our work, and we want to share them with the outside world. And so in the last 2 months or so, we have held learning events at the level of USA together with RFS in Washington to share some of our learnings across US missions or USAID missions across the globe. So this briefly about PolicyLink. And our collaboration with CACCI, CACCI is interested, or CACCI is working across all of these, but what we have started on is on the coordination and collaboration among the policy actors, the climate change policy actors in Ghana. And there are a lot of working groups at the level of EPA, at the level of MESTI, who are working on various climate change work. So we have the National Communications Working Group. This working group is what works on Ghana's national communications to the UNFCCC. So we have the 4th communication now, and there's going to be a 5th communication that has kickstarted. And we are working with CACCI to enable the actors, because this work requires coordination from different ministries, all the climate-sensitive ministries, and also public and private universities, international research institutions, and we are working together to ensure that this collaboration works, that these actors are coming together to work. We also have the NDCs. The NDCs are due, Ghana's NDCs is due for a review by 2025. And what we are doing is that Simon mentioned subnational actors. There are local actors whose job is to implement all these policies. To what extent are they involved in certain priorities and also reviewing the progress of NDCs? So for the next review process, PolicyLink is working with CACCI to ensure that subnational actors or local actors are part of the review process of the progress that we've made in the implementation of the NDCs and how we set priorities for the next phase of it. And then the final one is also, as Simon has mentioned, on the NAP process, we are also collaborating with them. There is a new steering committee you're going to hear about. It is not duplicative, it is complementary, and we are working also with CACCI to ensure that this working group also come on streams to complement the work that the 2 other working groups that I've mentioned are doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gerald. I will direct my next question to Chihenyu, and if you could please tell us about the implementation of CACCI in Africa. But before you do that, Madam, if you could just introduce yourself. Yes, thank you.
So thank you for this opportunity to speak here. My name is Chihenyu Kangara. I'm the Africa lead for CACCI, working with Michigan State University, and also collaborating with all the various respective partners whom you've heard this day. To be honest, all has been said, I think, at this point on how CACCI is working. The nuts and the bolts in each country is really homegrown. We are not addressing issues that are coming from somewhere else. We all realize that the climate crisis requires a multifaceted approach if we're to be able to address this issue really at the local level. And the ability of CACCI really is about being able to implement, utilizing various coordination platforms. The African countries already articulated very sound policies and strategies. The AUC has already mentioned what these are, and our African countries have responded quite adequately. But what was lacking? What was lacking is the ability to coordinate at these various levels and to bring think tanks such as ANAPRI and Academia 2063 to work more closely with the various countries to be able to articulate the issues that needed to be articulated through the NDCs. So right now we have 4 country work plans, and I think those have already been mentioned quite intensively, I think, in the various presentations. We have hopes of scaling up to additional 4 other countries by the end of the year. But most importantly, we're hoping that this program meets the aspirations of the AUC, because this is an AUC program. So in terms of implementation, we're on course, but also recognizing that more needs to be done. And I would like to stop there.
Thank you so much, Madam, for your input. My next question is directed to CACCI Asia, Suresh Babu. If you could please tell us about the implementation of CACCI in Asia. And before you do that, sir, if you could please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Suresh Babu. I'm a senior research fellow and head of capacity strengthening at the International Food Policy Research Institute. Since last April or so, I've been leading the Asia part of CACCI. Particularly, I want to share experience of one country where we started to work seriously on the ground. That's Tajikistan. That's in Central Asia. But we broadly are trying to develop policy systems in about 10 countries. Again, the exact countries are being worked out, but this is spreading across 4 sub-regions. For example, Central Asia, we are working, as I said, Tajikistan. We may be starting to work in Uzbekistan as well. There is discussion going on right now. In South Asia, that's a second region. We are seriously looking into Nepal system, working with the system there, in addition to India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. In Southeast Asia, we have already started communicating with Indonesia, Vietnam, and Laos. And in South Pacific, that's the 4th region, we are working with Fiji right now, starting to work with Fiji. This is about a cluster of 13 countries which are islands in South Pacific, very vulnerable for climate change. Fiji is a country where we are starting. Just to give you a broader picture, there is a lot of work to do, as we all agree, and a lot of countries are looking for help. And how do we organize ourselves, and what do we do with the countries in order to achieve the goals is the major issue. In terms of addressing broadly the set of issues, we are starting with the policy systems. What can we do with the policy systems in the climate change arena? What are the policy innovations that are needed? And that's a stock-taking exercise which we are engaging in right now, and African countries also mentioned that. We are also looking at what are the institutional innovations that we can come up with, in addition to what is going on in the countries, who is doing what is the institutional architecture, for example, in connecting the power structures, authorities, information flows, financial flows, as well as reporting of what is happening in terms of progress. That's the second set of activities we are starting to work on. And of course, looking at the technologies on the ground. What are the technologies that we can deploy right away, right now, and what are the priorities there? And to show progress. Otherwise, we'll be talking at the policy system level, going around and around, unless we get to the field level, the last mile delivery of the technology that can show progress in terms of both mitigation and adaptation. In that context, agriculture gives an opportunity quickly, because there are a lot of climate smart agriculture that are identified but not implemented. And that's where the institutional mechanisms such as research, extension, and the policy systems have to come together to implement. Then when we talk about that, where is the money going to come from? So we are developing on the investment plans. And who will fund this, and how do we bring the actors and players together, both the donors at the donor level, country level donors, as well as the government sector, the multi-sectoral group of people. But again, the governance of climate change actions at the national level needs to be understood. Who is in charge, who is doing what, who is accountable to who, and that, without that, we'll be also lost in that system. So we are doing that groundwork right now in Asian countries. And also, particularly in Tajikistan, we are looking at the capacity gaps. What are the capacity gaps for the governments to take on and do it for themselves? We talk about localization all the time. Localization means local capacity. Without that, we will be just doing for them, and they will be watching what we are doing. But how do we turn that around so that they can start working on, we can guide the process, and is something that we're looking seriously at. So engaging private sector, public sector, international NGOs, the donors is an important task. In Tajikistan particularly, we have brought these people together right now. We are undertaking integration of sectoral policies and strategies with the mainstreaming of the climate change policies. That's one thing seriously going on, because sectors are already implementing their strategies where a lot of climate change actions are happening. So they need to be brought to the mainstreaming of the climate change arena for discussion and monitored and then given the feedback. So on the one hand, we talk about integration of several sectors together, and it's important that we integrate and coordinate, but at the same time, we can just keep on integrating without doing something specific. And that's where we have to be very cautious. So we are, in Tajikistan, for example, we are working on agricultural sector strategy and drive the climate goals in that strategy to start with. Similarly, water sector, irrigation sector, look at the climate oriented goals there and drive them with the investment plan for that sector. It's a separate ministry there, water ministry and irrigation ministry. So we are going by sector to look at what we can accomplish in the 1 to 2 years time period and what we can report. But we are also connecting the national level happening to the regional. I said 4 sub-regional actors. There are regional players there. How do we bring these national lessons to the regional and regional to global? The global, we are talking about the COP28 that is coming up in Dubai. So we did that with Tajikistan, what we did that with CACCI, which is the regional organization in Central Asia. We took them to COP27 in Egypt. Actually, it was very helpful for us to show what Tajikistan is doing to the rest of the world in terms of attracting investments. So that's what is happening. Let me stop here.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for your submission. I'll go back to Brian, and if you could just be brief about this question. You talked about some lessons that Zambia has been able to do. You talked about collaboration with the ministry who have taken the initiative and is now implementing it. But we know with every initiative, there are challenges. If you could just please be brief and just tell us some challenges that you are facing in Zambia in regard to the implementation of CACCI.
Thank you very much, moderator. And yeah, true, you're right. It's not 100%, smooth sailing. There's been some challenges, particularly at the inception of the process, when we had to engage the government. I think the process was slower than expected, but we got over that. I think we had anticipated that. So even before the launch of CACCI officially, as IAPRI, I think what we did was to already begin to engage government using our social capital, our network, having, quote unquote, informal meetings just to give them a heads up and to prepare them of the formalization of our relationship. So that helped a bit in expediting the process. But currently, I think one of the biggest challenges has been trying to harmonize or synchronize the already ongoing processes with the CACCI activities. So, for example, I'll give an example of the validation of the NDC implementation framework. Zambia had already made significant progress in developing the implementation framework, which has the KPIs and all that. So for us to latch ourselves and be in sync with the process, it has not been easy because you have situations where the drivers of the process already think that, they've already jumped over certain hoops. But when you look at the framework itself, you still have, issues that you're not comfortable with or issues that, are obviously need to be relooked. But then you have this process that's already in motion and there's already that momentum. And so you are finding that balance between not seeming to overtake the process, but at the same time, trying to make sure that the correct thing is done hasn't been the easiest of things. Because also you have to understand that the process is working within a time frame, and so they have to beat the deadline. And also certain things were not, thought about, but now with the second or third pair of eyes, we're able to see certain things that would want to be incorporated. So that has been one of the major challenges, I think, that I can point at this moment. The other challenge, I think, also has been what I would term maybe the turnover of government officials, particularly in the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, which is the key ministry for climate action in Zambia. So you find that you're already creating this good rapport and relationship with certain officials, and then they are moved. So a new person comes in, you have to sort of start all over again, creating that relationship and understanding, bringing them up to speed, or they bring you up to speed to their way of thinking. So those are just some of the, I think, few challenges that I can highlight off the top of my head for now. Yeah, so let me leave it at that, moderator. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Brian, for your submission. I'll go back to Madam Chihenu. My question to you would be, what is so different from CACCI, from the other different climate change initiatives that have been implemented so far? How is CACCI so different?
Thank you for that question, because I believe that CACCI really is one unique program that is locally owned, locally managed, and locally led. CACCI Africa specifically was co-designed together with the key policy think tanks that have been mentioned today, NAPs and Academia 2063, and also brought in state-of-the-art information that was already known by various actors, both on the ground here in Africa and what was known by other actors outside the globe. More specifically, what is even more exciting is that this is really an African Union Commission initiative. And really, it's a program that addresses issues that the AUC and various member states have stated in various COPs that are important for Africa to really address the climate crisis. And that is, how can we get better data and evidence that can really drive climate ambition in Africa and also address adaptation at all levels. So through CACCI, this very unique program, we're bringing both policy actors, private sector, civil society actors, and donors to really work together in a way that is different, but in a way that is driven by African entities themselves.
Okay, thank you so much. Simon, if you could please highlight, I know you said the CACCI-Ghana has just started, but are there any challenges so far that you are facing? If you could please highlight any challenges.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Yeah, so I think the reason for us really probably starting a little bit late could be due to one of the things that I'm just going to talk about. So, action, evidence, and localization. If you want to go by that, what it means is that you really need a core group of stakeholders who will really be part of that localization process. In this case, as part of the framing of CACCI, country sort of technical teams were to really work with the climate change steering committees in various countries, or committees that, if they are not even called climate change steering committees, but are committees that are working on climate change issues, so that you will really have a buy-in whatever evidence you are generating, because they will have an input that gives you the opportunity to really, make sure that your output will go far. The process in constituting an oversight or a steering working group wasn't that easy. Our default thinking was that as a country, we have a steering committee on climate change. But when we began the process, we realized the mandate of the National Climate Change, as we actually got to know, does not really include overseeing to various projects that are being run on climate change. And so we actually got it wrong. What that means was that we needed to now begin to look for the process in constituting a recognizable, steering working group. And that process took a while. Obviously, we got input from the key people within the National Steering Committee to let us know that we could only constitute, a working group based on the existing working group. Thankfully, today, I think is one of the success stories that we actually have. And the working group that we have is really not just, detached from other working groups. No, members actually are constituted from the existing working group, but they actually are more, useful to the cause of what we are doing. I think one of the other challenges which I just want to throw out, and that is something that if we really will get climate change issues right, we have to look at, is the fact that when you are dealing with a project, I think many stakeholders think when the project ends, what happened next? And so the viewpoint that, is it one of those projects that as usual, the output will actually, be on the shelf? And that mentality or that sort of assertion, when we started contacting some other stakeholders, it made the progress look a bit, daunting. But we had to let them understand that what CACCI seeks to do is not to duplicate what is already existing, but is rather to really support the process. So the question is, at the end of the pilot phase, what happened? And some of these questions sort of bring to mind the fact that, yes, there is the need to think beyond the pilot stage and think of how to really sustain this sort of design that is meant to support the implementation of the various NDCs and NAPs. So 2 challenges that we were confronted with, but I think, let me just add, Madam Moderator, before I hand over. Through the process of navigating these challenges, I think that's where we also realized we could build a strong synergy with Policy Link. And so in every challenge, you always also have to look out for the little glimmer of hope. And I think in our quest to form this steering working group, we happened to realize that Policy Link was a key ally in how we move, and we have strengthened our synergy from there onwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Gerald, my next question is directed to you, please. Some key constraints that Policy Link is facing in supporting climate change work in Ghana, if you could please be brief.
Okay, so Simon has mentioned the first one, but let me quickly add 2. So the first one is the knowledge and involvement of subnational actors, and here we're talking about district and sub-district actors in the execution of, first in the knowledge, and second the execution of policies on climate change. So we did a stakeholder assessment, what we call a stakeholder-led assessment, where we engaged people at the national level, but also at the subnational level. And what we realized was a huge gap of subnational actors and their involvement and knowledge in climate change commitments of government government's climate change policies and how things are supposed to be implemented on the ground. So that is a constraint, and we're working on that. The second one is on frameworks and how actors are working within these frameworks. So we're working with the Ghana Meteorological Agency or the National Framework on Climate Services, and we realize how the different stakeholder groups, the producers, the users, the research and academia, are actually working in silos, and how we need to work together to bring them together. And so we're working with the Ghana Meteorological Agency and other stakeholders to, we have supported in launching the framework, and we're also going to support in coming up with a regulatory framework, because we have a lot of private sector entities that are coming out to develop and deliver climate information services. Who set the standards? There should be a regulation of this space. And so this is something that we are working on with the different actors. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Jita, from representing Rwanda and Senegal, if you could please be brief some challenges that you have been facing in regard to the implementation of CACCI.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it has been already said. I mean, it's always a challenge to bring the multi-stakeholders on board, because the different stakeholders have different interests and different capacity and different understanding of the climate change issues. So that was a big challenging. I mean, for example, in Rwanda, when we start, we were also involving some civil societies. And these civil societies, they want something that's really something that you have to go to the field and apply and all those things. That were their expectation. But for us, we want to show them the big pictures, and we want to link the policy process and even beyond the country. I mean, linking with continental-wide initiatives and all these things. So I think it took us a little bit some time to let them understand what we can contribute and what we can do. That's the first challenge. The other one is we also have, because climate change, there are a lot of initiatives in each countries. Even if there is a good, very good political will to get our support and to be involved, and they are very committed for climate actions. But at the same time, there are a lot of action going on here and there. For example, in Rwanda, I think there are a lot of things going on, and it took us a little bit some time to understand for the different initiatives that have been going on, and then to bring, to bring our support into that process. Just let me tell an example. For example, for tracking purpose, for supporting their M&D systems on climate change, the REMA, which is the management, the Rwanda Environment Management Agency, they have a different system of tracking emissions and also reporting MRVs and all these things. The Ministry of Environment has a different, very digital platform to monitor the environment in general. So these are two different platforms that, we have to bring them together. We have to get a discussion with them, how to bring them together, and then how to support them for implementing all these supports. Because there are a lot of tiny initiatives here and there. Even today, I just came from a workshop. They are trying to estimate the potential carbon in Rwanda for a carbon market procedure to develop. So there are a lot of things. So this took us a little bit of time, but it's okay. It's good to invest some time to understand so that we can add value. So those are some of the challenges that we faced from the actual practice. Yeah. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you so much. We will now invite the audience. We are running against time, so we'll invite the audience. If you have any questions for our panelists, we'll take it, please. If you show by the raise of hand, we'll give you the microphone to ask your question, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Chris Gordon, and I work at the Institute for Environment and Sanitation Studies of this university. I have a couple of comments, a question, and a brief announcement. I will be brief in total. The first issue I would like to bring up is the issue of engagement. And we think engagement is simple, and engagement itself is a researchable activity. And sometimes we go and meet with different audiences and we think we can use the same approach. So when we talk about knowledge sharing or knowledge management, you need to bring in the element of knowledge brokerage. How do you convert knowledge which may be suited for academics or policymakers into a different form that can be readily understood and appreciated by people, as I think you said, at the grassroots level? So that is my question. What is CACCI doing towards that? The second question I have is climate change is a problem of the youth. Many of us, even 2030, if you're not careful, we won't be there, let alone 2050 or 2080. So how is CACCI in the different countries deliberately involving young people in the activities? The comment that I have is that University of Ghana, Cape Town, and Nairobi are part of a group known as ARUA CD, that is the Alliance of Research Universities in Africa, or is it Africa? And I don't like the fact that you've taken the action out of the CACCI Africa. We are not, it may end up with no action. Anyway, that's beside the point. But we also partner with Peter, please help me. Is it ASA? The African Climate is something on inequality and poverty. Yeah. Which is also hosted by University of Ghana. So by having the climate and development working together with the poverty and inequality, we get more than 1 + 1. We get synergy and actually exponential impact in terms of the research and approach. My request is that University of Ghana is working with Google Foundation trying to develop ways in which you can get climate information to policymakers, decision makers. And I would request, Madam Facilitator, if it is allowable for my young man here to pass around some pieces of paper for people to indicate if they would like to be part of that workshop where we're creating, using artificial intelligence and machine learning to create a platform for policymakers, decision makers, to get to climate information easier. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof, for your comments and questions. So the first question was on knowledge sharing. How do we take care of different stakeholders at the CACCI level? Madam Shineru, I will... Brokerage, knowledge brokerage, how are we tackling that? I'll confirm, I need to confirm with the organizers. Anthony, can we please share the...
So there's been a lot that has been talked about knowledge, information, evidence-based research, translating that towards climate action. But I think it's also important to note that CACCI is not working thinking that it's a silo on its own. To address the climate crisis, there's need for various consortia to work together. Through CACCI, we're bringing just one of a kind of a consortia that can be able to address those 3 elements that we talked about: inclusive growth, climate resilience, ag-food security. But this should not be looked at as an entity on its own. We all know that ARUA CD is there, that is functioning, that it's working. I mean, it's really important to be able to leverage and to work across various platforms. What CACCI is doing is being able to actually set these kind of baselines that enables stronger engagement in country by putting to task the various mandated multi-sectorial coordination platforms that the countries themselves have actually articulated. So if we hone into the various sectoral platforms that each country has in place, whether it's in Ghana or Uganda or wherever in our continent there is, how do we strengthen that? And you brought a very key important issue, the youth. How do we engage the youth in this process? CACCI is offering to support research across ag for security elements. And already through this network, the PRCI network, we are able to drive research by the youth. I think this morning we saw quite of the fellows and the kind of work that they're doing that really addresses questions that various African countries had also already articulated. So there's room for youth engagement, and there's room for leveraging with other existing platforms. But again, we're looking at homegrown solutions that CACCI can put on the table by working closely by already think tanks that already exist. So I don't see any reason why CACCI cannot say that, hey, we're stretching out to Arua CD to support us. After all, it's not CACCI that drives the implementation, it's the multi-sectoral coordination platforms in country that actually articulates the various questions that they need answered and the various platforms that they can go to.
Thank you so much. We'll take the next questions.
Thank you very much. Mine is a very simple one. I'm listening to all of you and I'm thinking of sustainability, because a lot of these things are dependent on funding, donor funding, which has a cycle, 3 years, 5 years. What next? How do we build in sustainability? How do we build in exit strategy? Should the donor exit? How do we sustain this effort? Thank you.
I think, Gerald, you take the question.
Okay, so I'll take it. So we are say that activity we ended in 2026. So that is straight to your adopt what we call facilitative leadership. So the L in our name is leadership. Leadership, I is interaction, network, and we say we don't drive. We are not in the driving. Providing the platform, we are enabling actors to work. Actors who are in the policy process themselves are doing their work, and all that we do with the limited funding that we have is to enable those systems to work. And so within that period, create a functional system that would be able to take off even when we are out. So I think the key is not to go and do the work for the actors, but create the environments where the actors are able to do the work.
Right. Yeah, thank you. And I think for us, indeed, our cycle is also something that is very eminent in terms of when we are to finish. That's somewhere in October this year. But what I think is key is, even at the end of it all, if there isn't an what may be very important for us is keeping an eye on other opportunities that even if we are going to continue to do anything, we'll be looking at funding that should really go straight to continuity. So in other words, it's not going to be very prudent once we are done. We just sort of, feel that it's over. But I think we should rather be more proactive. And that is what, as a risk institute, likely you are our director, you push us to really look for funding that will really help in continuing with this very framework that CACCI has actually designed. In a sense, if we do not really sort of support the actors to really implement our NDCs and our NAPs, I think we are going nowhere. We may update our NDCs, in 2025, but we'll just only be running around the circle. So it's very important that we keep an eye on opportunities that will help us to really, establish a bit of continuity, even when there is a gap in between. That's what I think from our side. Thanks.
Please, we'll take the next question from the gentleman nearby.
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Francis Afove, and I'm the director for African Foundation for Climate Change and Sustainable Development. I'm taking a quote from Mr. Yambi's presentation. He did mention that climate change is affecting every fabric of our existence, and it is true. We just added 1 billion to our global human population within 12 years. But initially, it took the world to reach 1 billion, just 1 billion, by the year 1800. But we just added 1 billion to the global human population just the past 12 years. Now the question is, how can humanity survive without an increase in the global food basket? So African Foundation for Climate Change and Sustainable Development, what we are doing is we are building the farmers' resilience to climate change because we believe that they hold the key to the global food basket. But one of the challenges we've seen is support in terms of finances. Sometimes we'll start a project and at the end it will not be complete. So since CACCI is more concerned of evidence, impacts, and the rest, what are some of the relationships between CACCI and that of community-based organizations or NGO as far as climate change is concerned? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I know it's an important question, and that's why we need to be inclusive. The point we are making is we need to identify the private sector, public sector, local NGOs, international NGOs, and the institutions like you who have done already work on climate change. How do we bring that knowledge base to what we do and provide that platform that we talked about? One of the things that we need to keep thinking about as we talk about sustainability is the local capacity. And investing in local capacity is important and foundational for sustainability as well. So what we are finding out in the Asian context, if I can give this, you talked about 1 billion per year requirement before you go 2030 in your introduction from the government. Similar numbers are presented by the countries. 1 billion exactly for Cambodia. And they want every year 1 billion to address climate change so that they can meet the goal 2030. But they get 200 million right now. Right? And there is no capacity to spend that 200 million. Now we are talking about we need more money and so on, we need. But where is the capacity to implement what we have right now? And that's why we need to start and show the progress, monitor, and bring the best lessons that we can learn and scale up with the resources that we have, both financial and capacity. In that process, we build that sustainability. That's the approach that we should be taking, and that's working in Asian countries where they take the leadership and drive the process.
Okay, thank you. We have some questions online, so we'll take them. Okay, so I'll read it. It says you agree that Africa is not complicit in climate change causes. So what impact is being expected from CACCI initiatives? Given the fact that Africa is very poor, what would then happen to production processes if more restrictions are imposed by CACCI initiatives?
I'm going to say this a number of times until it hits home. We are not imposing restrictions. We are supporting African countries to deliver on what they see are their priorities and needs and to help them articulate those into adequate policies, programs, regulatory frameworks, investments and to support capacity building so that we can be able to address the climate crisis. And in fact, to be honest, so that African countries can own those processes. So in terms of what works for Africa, let Africa determine that. And CACCI is here to support those processes by ensuring that you get the evidence that is required, because we asked for evidence to support our work here in Africa. And this is what CACCI is about. It brings networks such as the one you're seeing here, networks of researchers who are capable to work in country to deliver on these required policies, programs, regulatory frameworks, research, investments, and capacities that are required for us to be able to address this issue. So it's really up to us, African countries, to drive the process and utilize what sort of capacities we can get from CACCI. And again, we must reiterate that these processes are driven by countries. So you have these multi-sectorial coordination platforms that each country has set. And it's our work through CACCI and others to ensure that they actually work for us as a continent. So again, limitations will be us to determine as African countries. I hope that is very clear to everybody.
Anyway, no, so I don't have much to add except to say that, yes, we are looking for what we will always say, homegrown solution to the problems that are confronting us within the climate change arena. We might not be emitting a lot, but we are faced with the vagaries of climate change. And so we rather need to be more proactive in helping, if not with mitigation, we should strengthen adaptation or resilience. Thanks.
So we'll take the last question. We are running against time and the panelists are here. So if you have any concerns or questions, you can go to them after the program. So it is obvious that compensations of subsidies will be required to mitigate shortages that will accompany climate-smart agri systems. Where will this come from? Yes. Okay, can we please see the question again? So it's from Professor Adikoya. It is obvious that compensations of subsidies will be required to mitigate shortages that will accompany climate change agri system. Where will this come from? It means where will the funds be coming from?
I think that is a very legitimate question, because we're promoting a lot of climate-smart agricultural practices that it's not easy for the farmer to just adopt it. And there are sometimes, even if they are able to access funds from commercial institutions, the timeline for paying back is too short. And so I would not even say only compensation, but even incentives for them to do that. And I think there are a lot of projects like Policy Link and other USAID IPs, what we call implementation partners. So we have a project called the Market Systems and Resilience, MSR, who are actually supporting farmers to adopt, for example, solar irrigation and other agricultural technologies that sort of, they are incentives for the farmers to see the benefits of these things. I think that eventually it should actually come from also national sources. So we have the Planting for Food and Jobs, for example, which is a big national policy. It should have things like this integrated in them, including agricultural insurance and other things that farmers need to be able to see the benefits of the adaptation practices that we are promoting.
And just to add to that, through the CACCI program, we intend to ensure that there will be investment plans that will be developed for each country, and to be able to have investment plans that will really be informed and credible. It's through this data and evidence that we're actually collating through CACCI. Now, these investment plans, with support from USAID and other donors, I mean, we can be able to leverage resources or crowdsource from other sources. I mean, we have the international frameworks for climate finance. You have the Adaptation Fund, you have the Green Climate Fund, and other sorts of investments. Here in Africa, the Africa Development Bank has also put together various funding mechanisms, but the same question still comes on mind. Where is the data? Where is the evidence? So if we don't have the data and evidence, we cannot be able to develop credible investment plans that can then be supported by both governments in Africa and also various private actors. So let's work on collating this evidence and data, and through CACCI, be able to tell a very coherent, compelling story that enables us to then be able to go out to look for the investments. And I hope through that, we can then be able to address the questions that were raised in terms of investments.
Can I add to what Chegenyo has said? Looking at the integration of the sectoral strategies, where the money is already being spent, and if you look at the combination of what is going for agricultural innovations, for example, implementing agricultural innovation, and the relationship to these innovations to the climate smart agricultural innovations, they are up to 50% you can save the money already. Money is already being invested, and only through redirecting and guiding and leveraging, as you said, it can be actually climate-oriented investment. Okay, that information needs to be generated. And who is spending what on what kind of technologies that are implemented, and how do we can combine. So more and more what is going to happen is any effort you are taking in any sector is going to be climate oriented. Social safety nets we are talking about, we are spending social safety nets, and even that has to be mainstreamed with climate change investments. So there is not going to be well, of course we can generate new investments through investments plans and identifying priorities, but already existing investments, already money that is being spent on wasteful subsidies, if I want to call that, can be directed to the climate-oriented, climate-resilient agriculture. We need to think about innovation. That's why I talked about the policy innovations on that front, institutional innovations where we can redirect extension research systems toward resilient agriculture, and also technological innovations where we can save and also redirect investments for the climate goals. So we need to be working on those issues. Thank you.
All right, I guess you expect me to speak. No. I mean, for me, I see green economy really being the way to go. It's the anchor of it all, in a sense that there are green climate investment opportunities. And I think, is it at, one of the COPs, developing countries were promised so much. If such a fund is set up, like coming back to the issue of if we don't have the capacity, yeah, you have the funds, all right, but we will not be able to tap into it. And this is why for CACCI, I think the component of capacity building is key, so that we can have the right, sort of set of skills to really bid for, great funds to really support with all these green initiatives. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much, our panelists, for your engagement. Thank you so much. You may please resume your seats. Thank you. Thank you, Gerald. Thank you, Chinenu. Thank you, Brian from Zambia. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, everyone. So just to summarize everything, we have been told that CACCI assists African countries to address the issues of climate change, especially in regard to their NDCs and their NPAs. And one thing that came to mind is the issue of knowledge brokerage. How is CACCI implementing the relationship between the producers of knowledge and the users of knowledge? I think it is one thing that CACCI, you need to look at. The involvement of young people in climate change. We were informed that, yes, in this morning we had some young fellows presenting what they have done in relation to climate change. But going forward, we hope to see more young people, and especially CACCI-Ghana, ISE, Simon, we want to see more of our students citing CACCI as where they are getting their data from, and from the other countries too. The issue of partnership also came into being. We've heard a lot about policy with the government sector, but the question was asked, what about the non-government sector? How are you bringing these people on board into CACCI? So that is also something that CACCI need to look at. And also the issue of sustainability. After 5 years of the implementation of CACCI, where do we see CACCI? Will CACCI still be mentioned, or CACCI will die after 5 years? We hope after 5 years we'll all be here to see the success stories that CACCI has done, and also the still CACCI going strong with new partnership and new ideas coming in. Thank you. So we'll take the next item on our program, which is the outdooring of the steering working group, and also the closing remarks by the director of ISA and Professor Korte. So we'll do the outdooring first before. Okay. Okay. So I will do the outdooring, after which Prof will give his closing remarks, please. We have, so this is in relation to CACCI-Ghana's. Okay. So I will call them, then after I'm done, please, when you hear your name, can you please just step forward so that we can acknowledge you, also know who you are. After that, Prof will adore you and we'll take the closing remarks, please. So we have from the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, who is the head of climate change, we have Mr. Jima Mohammed. If you are here, please, if you could just step forward. From the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, who is the lead for sustainability and resilience, we have Engineer Godfred Fifi Bwedi. Then we have from the Agricultural Extension Services, Ministry of Agriculture, who is a Deputy Director at the Ministry, we have Mrs. Prospera Anku. Then from the the Energy Commission of Ghana, who is a Deputy Director for Energy Efficiency and Climate Change, we have Mr. Kennedy Amankwa. For EPA, that is the Environmental Protection Agency, we have Dr. Daniel Benefo, who is in charge of UNFCCC Focal. I know these two people are not here today. Likewise, Dr. Mchibosia Kwamwa, so we'll skip that. We have Madam Juliana Bempa from the Environmental Protection Agency. If you are here, please. She is the Principal Program Officer for the Climate Change Unit. And Engineer Joy Hesi Ankoma, who is also from the EPA, who is also the Deputy Director of Human Settlement. Thank you. If you could please step forward, just stand here so we acknowledge you. If we could please clap and acknowledge the CACCI-Ghana Steering Working Group. CACCI-Ghana Steering Working Group. I will please, at this time, we invite Professor Korte to acknowledge them.
So, gentlemen, we are so grateful you could make it. We are outdooring the steering group. For those who are not here, they said if you want to tell God something, you tell the wind. So we are telling the wind that they are part of the steering group and they have been adored. Now, today we are charging you, as you step out there, hit the ground running. Action, evidence, localization. We want to see this bring fruit. We want to see this to its fruition. We hope you will support the process and make CACCI a household name. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Prof, we'll take your closing remarks.
I think we are all tired, and as for academics, if you give us a microphone, we will talk for so long, but I refuse not to do so, except to say that it has been a very fruitful day. We started this morning. We started the morning with a lot of activities. We even went round, looked at the poster session, came back, and it's been so fruitful. It's been so wonderful. I thank all of you for your rapt attention. Normally at conferences and meetings, the mornings are packed, but close to late afternoon, you see it's half full. I see your active participation, your interest to get this done. We are so grateful. Go have your dinner, have rest, and tomorrow we'll all be here early morning to continue. I am sure that the rapporteurs and everything are taking notes. And on the third day, we will have a summary of all activities, of all discussions, and the way forward. So on that note, I say thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Prof. We'll take a photo. We want to take a photo of all of us. So we'll be instructed by Madam Vicentia Corte. But at the end of, when we are done taking the photos, if please you were invited by CACCI to come for this event, can you please come back into the hall? We just want to see you briefly. Very briefly. It will not take more than 5 minutes. Very briefly. So we'll go through the door to my left and we'll take the picture there, please.
What's that? Oh, we've got the truck. Uh-huh. We've got this truck. You said you wanted to start out earlier.